Welcome to the Global Glug, un podcast internacional sobre spirits dove condividiamo historias y tradizioni made in English con un toque de español, italiano y un accenno de français. Chin chin! Welcome back. Today I'm with Eric Kaye, the founder of Holmes Cay. Eric, thank you very much for your time. We met. So, to be honest, I tried to get you. It was a while I was trying to get you, or thinking about you to get me on the show, and then you wrote me a couple of weeks ago on Facebook, and you told me you enjoyed the interview with Ivar. It's a friend of you. I know you made some trips with him. So again, thank you, Eric, for your time. Today we are going to talk about you and your rums. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on. I didn't even know, I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't even know about your podcast until Ivar was on it. And I'm like, wow, this is great.
It's a new podcast I started a year ago. So I live in Colombia. I'm from Switzerland. By the way, I'm going back to Switzerland in a couple of months. So it's May, I will start a new job. Anyway, it's not about me today. It's about you. So I know you started in bottling rums in 2019. I saw on your website, but before that you were not in the rum industry at all. So
No,
I know you were
had no spirits industry experience. I was a musician and a composer, and I spent 25 years in the recording studio writing music for TV shows and commercials and movies. And I just drank a lot of rum. And it came about because I got tired of not being able to get the rum I wanted in America. I would go to Europe, and you would see these amazing bottlings by Vellier and all these other bottlers. And then you'd go to the Caribbean, and you'd find all these rums that were not available in America. And I'm like, well, if nobody's going to bring them to me, I'll just bring them myself. And that was the genesis.
And so you were also a scuba diver. I imagine that you used to travel. We were just talking before you have also been to Colombia. It's not maybe the best rum country in the world, but I can imagine that you have been also in other Caribbean countries where you can find a lot of rum. And how did you get into rum? So how was your first,
my
experience?
Superhero origin story? That's a great... my first experience of rum was when I was 16 years old. And I took a scuba diving trip down to the Bahamas. And the drinking age was, of course, 21 even back then. But if you could see over the bar in the Bahamas, they would serve you. And I thought this was the best thing in the world. They had a Bahama Mama, which was light rum and dark rum and coconut rum and Nassau Royale, which was this great vanilla liqueur that's not made anymore. And a couple of juices thrown in there. And that was really where the rum journey began. And then, as I became of age, I moved up to Bacardi, from the cheap Bahamian, whatever was in that rum. And then, moved on beyond Bacardi and kept going on and on. Really, the big turning point when I started to get real serious was 2003. And I remember that year because it was the 300th anniversary of Mount Gay, 1703. And I just happened to be down in Barbados and Guyana that year. And they had released their special tricentennial edition of rum, which was, back then I think it was $60 or $70 a bottle. Now it's $1,500 if you can find one. It was incredible. And then popped over to Guyana and had the first release of El Dorado 25-year. And I'm like, wow, this is a new universe of spirit. And never looked back, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mount Gay, it's also kind of, the Rolls Royce of rums. You can find them everywhere, and they are always, of course, good quality. So you started also with a rum which is approachable, which is not maybe that complicated, and also nice to get in. I think Mount Gay is also a rum that I like to recommend to people when they start their journey with rums. It's approachable one, and not too complicated, also not too strong for some flavors, maybe sometimes.
It's great. And the Tricentennial was their oldest stock. It was aged. It was wonderful. And I recently had the chance to spend some time with Frank Ward, who used to run Mount Gay, the last ward.
Yeah.
And I told him how much, I loved that rum. He's like, oh, that was garbage. I hated that rum.
Okay.
Because Frank likes really young rum. He likes it light and refreshing. And to him, that was a travesty. To us, it was like the best thing they'd ever put out. And he's like, oh, that rum was garbage.
Okay, yeah. Points of view.
Right?
I never tasted this. So now, of course, Mangay they released new rums. There is now the single estate series, which is really interesting. They changed a bit the approach. Maybe we can talk about it later. But yeah, let's talk about your rum. So you fell in love with rum, drinking rums, maybe during a scuba diving or during record sessions. How did you start to? I mean, how was your first approach getting into rum? I mean, should not be easy to start finding out where to buy rums. How did you start with all this? Your business.
My business. Well, right around that time, it was probably around 2017, 2018, I was getting a little bit bored with music. I had done everything I wanted to. It wasn't fun. It had gone from writing in a recording studio with live musicians and singers to sitting at home on your laptop and composing, and that wasn't the same. So it just happened to be the same time Foursquare was putting out all these incredible releases in Europe only. And that's, I was like, they've got to come to America. Why not? And right also at that same time, it was sort of a perfect storm of the music business kind of changing, seeing all these European rums, and an article came out by Matt Petrick all about independent bottlers, which, I had seen them in Europe, but I didn't really know how they went about. And he explained that there was this company in Liverpool, the main rum company, that supplies most of these barrels to everybody. So I, picked up the phone and called them up, and they're very nice, and they said, "Sure, we'll sell you rum. We won't be able to get it to you, but we can sell it to you." And that involved a couple of months of speaking to various people of how I could get their rum into America, because it involved an incredible amount of bureaucracy. The alcohol industry in America is more regulated than the pharmaceutical industry. The amount of permits and licenses and things that you need. So we needed to get our federal permit, a state permit, marketing permits, trucking permits, all this wonderful fun things. But we started off with a couple of barrels of Foursquare rum.
Okay. Just a couple of barrels, was that the minimum? Because I'm always wondering how much you have to buy.
You can buy one barrel.
Okay.
One barrel, and they'll say, 2 barrels fit on a pallet, so if you're shipping one, you may as well ship 2. I actually bought 4 to start. We released 2 of them, and the other 2 we stuck into port barrels to see, because it was my goal to recreate that first Foursquare port cask, which I failed miserably at, but came out with a different rum that was kind of cool.
Okay. And from here, then you started. You realized that this is. How was the market reacting to your rums? How did you start to selling it?
That's great. So, first I was able to somehow convince my wife that, oh yeah, this is a good idea. Give me $50,000. I'm going to buy some rum, and we'll take it out of our home equity line of credit. And we bottled our first 2. It came out to 80 cases, I think, 40 cases per each barrel. And I just loaded up my car with a bunch of cases and started driving around to liquor stores saying, hey, will you buy this? And I would say about 60 or 70% of the places just laughed me out of the store. They're saying, what, $150 bottle of rum? There's no such thing. And there really wasn't at that time.
Yeah.
There weren't really any other independent bottlers at the time. Velier had just gotten into the market. Hamden wasn't really here yet. Foursquare still was doing the lower proof stuff for the most part, with the exception of the 2004, I think, and 5. But most people said, you're crazy. But there were a few mostly stores that sold high-end whiskey and bourbons, and they got it, and they're like, okay, we'll take a case. It turns out I wasn't the only one, and we sold out of those first 2 barrels relatively quickly. And then said, hey, let's do it again. There's a lot of other rums I can't get here besides Foursquare. So,
so this...
Yeah, and at the time, Foursquare wasn't putting out these 62%, 64% rums like they are now. Europe had been getting them. Destino was one that was the one I really wanted and couldn't get. So now they're doing all these wonderful things at 62, 63%. Not necessarily better at 62, but that's just the way I, like to drink it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's also a niche market. It's not for everyone. We, as you know, maybe we do rum tasting, rum and chocolate tasting with Colombian rums, and here people, when we get, sometimes people feel it's strong at 40%. So imagine 62 or above. So it's not always, but yeah, it's a ultra niche market. And so talking about the rums you are selecting, so you start with Foursquare. Are you still working with brokers, or are you also now approaching it a bit differently after a couple of years?
It's a combination of the two. We have direct relationships with, good 7 or 8 distilleries directly now, in addition to working with the guys at Cane Rum and E&A Shear. So it's a combination. We're at the point now where distilleries are reaching out to us saying, hey, would you consider releasing one of our rums, which is really kind of cool and nice. We found some amazing distilleries that way. But certain rums you can only get through, like, the Cane Rum and Shear. Foursquare being the prime example.
Yeah.
Richard Seal is a wonderful supporter of independent bottlers. He's, been helpful, but he only deals with the guys in Amsterdam, which is totally fine, acceptable, because otherwise he'd have 800 people a day saying, sell me a barrel. He's like, sure, I'll sell you a barrel, but you've got to get it through Karsten. So, that will always be through them. But others, like our South African rums, we're dealing directly with the distillery in South Africa, Belize as well.
Yeah, I saw you have been with Ivar as well. You have been to South Africa to visiting MOBA.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about. I tasted it once or a couple of times MOBA in once I think in the States, and the second other one in Barcelona. What can you maybe tell us about this distillery? So is it a smaller? It's a smaller company, isn't it? So it's not a big one. It's more like a craft distillery.
Yeah, MOBA is one of my favorite distilleries. I wish it wasn't so far away. It's a single estate distillery, which means they grow all of their own sugar cane on site, and it's all fresh cane juice rum. Robert Greaves was a mechanical engineering background. He built his own cane crusher, and he built his own pot stills. He has 3 200-liter pot stills, and he does a really long open-air fermentation with wild African yeasts. So you get the fresh cane juice with a really long fermentation into these homemade pot stills. So it's really a cross between a really fresh, bright agricole rum and a super funky Jamaican rum. It's really a unique rum, and I really love what they're doing. So excited to be bringing in some more of that, which we had on our last trip, and we're bringing in a high ester white rum from them as well under their own label. So we're going to be bringing in Holmes Cay single barrels, and then MOBA white, and then we're working on a really cool pineapple rum together.
Okay.
Which will be under a third brand.
Okay.
It's called Sahangi, which is the Siswati word for pineapple.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So we took a relatively light cane juice MOBA with a quicker fermentation, and just took some Queen Natal pineapples, Natal Queen pineapples, and infused them for a couple of weeks, and it's delicious. I'm really excited for that one to come out.
Okay, is that more maybe for meant for cocktails as well, or is it? Can you?
I drink it. I can down a bottle of that straight. It's delicious. You can do anything you want with it.
Okay. Yeah, because I think spiced rums again is something which is some purists are always against. How do you think that is going to be accepted by your audience?
Well, it's not really a spiced rum per se. It's more like a rhum arrangé, if you would say, because we don't add any sugar, we don't add any spices. It was really easy to get FDA formula approval because it's just rum, and we stick a pineapple in it for 2 weeks.
Yeah, completely natural,
Yeah.
no additive. Yeah, this is typical French way of doing rum arrangé. You were mentioning before the high ester rums. So it's always high ester rums. People love it or you hate it. I see in your lineup, in your portfolio, you have. I don't know if because I never tasted. You have the Jamaican one. I don't know if it's a high ester one, the ITP 2007, and you have another one, EMB. So both are from Clarendon, and the other one is
And
from
Long
Long Pond. Exactly.
Those are both low ester rums.
Okay.
The ITP is the lowest ester mark that Long Pond makes, actually. And I specifically wanted that because part of what we're trying to do is bring rum to the masses. You know, yes, we love the rum geeks, but we want to expand. It's such a small universe and bubble that we're in that I would love those 10,000 people that drink bourbon for every 100 that drink rum, and starting them on a DOK or a STCE is not going to get people into rum.
Okay.
And Jamaican rum has got such a rich and wonderful history and so many great flavors that you can't start them at the top of the scale. And ITP is a great entry point. I call it an intro to Jamaican rum. It's like intro to funk. It's Bruno Mars. It's not George Clinton. Bootsy. It sort of teaches you what Jamaican rum is about without beating you over the head. And even that is hard for a lot of bourbon drinkers to jump over to. They're like, oh, you know, they love the Foursquare. They love the Belize rums. Even the Venezuelan rums they enjoy. But when they get their first taste of Jamaica, they're like, what's this rotten banana? This doesn't taste like bourbon. And I'm like, no, it's not supposed to.
It's interesting because, so the point of view, I had just recorded last week a podcast with Magdalena Raschke from Colors of Rum, and we were talking about high ester rums, and it's incredible how her perception was different from yours now, because she said, we got a lot of people from other whiskey drinkers, whatever, to rum because thanks to high ester rums. And I was like, okay. And now you're telling me the other way around. I was thinking, which should be more normal. People don't like that much these high ester rums. They would get into rum thanks to other like Foursquare or low ester rums. So it's interesting to see the different point of view.
Yeah, I got to see what Magda's saying about that, or what she's calling a high ester rum. It's you know, most rum drinkers don't like high ester rum. You know, it wasn't meant for drinking. Really, high ester rum was meant to ship over to Europe so you could make rum for schnit. I mean, that's why it exists.
I think maybe I don't like that much. I mean, I drink it, yes, but I'm not really get crazy for high ester rums. But I think also what people likes is how high ester rum is made. So all the approach, the science, the MOBA, the dunder, etc. So maybe this is also part of the romance, you know, explaining how rum is made.
And there's different ways to make high ester rum as well. You know, dunder and muck isn't the only way to do it. You know, Richard Seal has his own method of making. You know, his LFT rum, you know, MOBA has their way. Savannah in Reunion have their way of making high ester rum, which is completely different from the Jamaican way.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about the Gran Arome, the difference between Gran Arome and high ester rum from Jamaica. Can you maybe explain me how the difference is, the process is different?
Well, the Grand Arome is a French style of rum that only 2 distilleries in the world are currently making, as far as I know, which is Le Gallienne in Martinique and Savannah in Réunion. You know, Jamaican, they use some muck and dunder. Those of you who don't know, dunder is what's left over in the still after you run it, and they take some of that, store it in dunder tanks, and use some of that in the next wash. And then muck is just this, you know, pit of organic matter black sludgy stuff, wonderful, all the flavor crystals. So you take a scoop of muck in there as well, and that turbocharges all the acids and the esters. So Grand Arome in Savannah, in Reunion, they used a closed, controlled fermentation, so they don't do an open fermentation with wild yeast. They have their own specifically, designed bacteria and yeast strands that they add to the tanks, that they culture and get out of labs. So they know exactly how to dial in their high ester Reunion rums. It's much more of a scientific process than the Jamaicans, which is 300 years of tradition and history doing it.
It's more a controlled way of the fermentation, so it's way more scientific. I think that sometimes in Jamaica, I don't know if it's not always the same quality, but the same result they want to achieve. Maybe it's more difficult to get consistency.
Yeah, I mean, it's like cooking. It's magic. It's not always going to be the same thing. There's a little bit of fairy dust in every distillation run.
Mm-hmm. Your rums are all additive-free, no sugar. I read an article about Ivar. He was about your rum. Ivar was reviewing a rum of your Venezuela rum without sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to make too much. I mean, I just want to ask you about the importance of sugar and no sugar, because he was telling exactly in this article how this Venezuela rum, I guess it's from Santa Teresa, even though I think you cannot really disclose it, but I imagine it's from there because it was talking about what's the place?
Aragua.
Aragua Valley, exactly. Yes, the sugar, the impact of sugar is important for some rums. Maybe they are, say, lower quality to mask up. What's your point of view? What do you think about this article?
My thoughts on sugar, I prefer to add my own simple syrup rather than pay for it. Some rums definitely taste better with sugar because they're poor distillate. Other people make some good rum, but just add sugar because specifically in America, Americans love sweet. Sweet sells. Bacardi Limon sells more than Bacardi because they load it up with sugar and lemon, and Americans have really strong sweet tooths. My issue is when you add a bunch of sugar to mask poor distillate and some coloring and put a fake number on the bottle and put it on the shelf right next to a Hamden or this, honestly made rum and consider them the same in value. And it's not the same product. It's almost like you would go to a liquor store and see Fireball right next to the Macallans and saying, you can have either the Fireball or the Macallan. They're both whiskey. So I love sugar in my rums along with some lime and maybe a little mint, and I call it a mojito or a daiquiri. I prefer to buy my rums without it and add it as I see fit. This conversation doesn't happen with whiskey,
exactly,
like why is I like my sugared whiskeys better. It's needed sometimes. It's a bullshit argument.
Yeah, it's unfortunately rum. It's also known sometimes. Rum, I don't like it because it's sweet, so it's always the same type. Same discussion. It's difficult to talk about, to explain. Maybe sometimes potential clients, potential buyers. How do you approach this when you have, for example, master classes talking about your rums? How is your audience?
People are going to like what they like, and if you love a sugar rum, happy days. I'm not the sugar police. I'm not going to say you shouldn't drink that. I'm going to say these are the rums I'm going to let you taste. All of our rums have no sugar, and hopefully once you go through these, you'll like them and you'll appreciate them, and you'll say, I don't need sugar in my rums. There was a time 20 years ago when we really didn't know that all of these rums had sugar. Before they started doing the hydrometer tests and Johnny Dreher and the Systembolaget in Sweden, we just thought they were great rums. And then as we sort of realized what was going on, and had some of these rums that Richard was starting to put out, already, 15 years ago. It was an eye-opener. So yeah, my way of converting people is just not to give them rum with sugar, and hopefully they will like them.
Yeah, that's important because, of course, again, rum and sugar, it was always this match which is not doesn't have to be.
It was interesting. I was at a tasting this past weekend in Florida, and there was another rum there, which I won't mention, but it was from Central America. And I took one sip of their special, pick, and I'm like, wow, this one's loaded with sugar. And the brand rep or the distributor rep was like, no, there's no sugar in this. It's all natural. Rum's made with sugar. That's why it tastes sweet. And I'm like, please, I can guarantee you this rum. And I went on the hydrometer test, and I showed him that this rum had 20 grams of sugar per liter in it. He's like, what's the source of that information? I'm like, well, it's the Swedish government testing it. Yeah. There's a lot of misinformation out there about additives in rum and tequila as well.
Mm-hmm. And especially it comes from the sales rep, from the person who is selling it. So, and he already says the information rum is made from sugar, so it's sweet. So there is really completely misconception sometimes. And
yeah.
A fight sometimes difficult to win.
A lot of times when you're going to tastings, the person pouring is somebody hired for the event who, was given 10 minutes to read over a thing, who knows nothing about rum, or somebody from the distributor who may know a little about rum, but they also have to know about 500 other brands they carry. And today I'm pouring this rum, and these are my 5 talking points. So, it's not a knock on them. It's hard for a brand to have 800 reps all over the country that all really know everything. So you're going to get a lot of... once we tried to hire a tasting group to do some tastings for us in Texas, and I got the charge back. We were pouring some single barrel Foursquare Belize, nice $150 rums. And when I got the invoice, there was also a charge for Coca-Colas along with it. I'm like, what was that for? It's like, oh, we were serving them as rum and Cokes because that's...
My God.
Yeah, like I paid you for this?
Yeah. So about your company, now you said it's you and your wife. Do you have someone else helping out, or
Yes. We have Mike Hooker, who is our global brand ambassador. He's based out of Texas right now.
Okay.
And he was, he founded the Austin Rum Society, and I went down to Texas and did a tasting for the Austin Rum Society, and he's like, I want to do this too, and basically continued to bug us until we hired him.
Okay, yeah. Nice to have motivated people, insiders. This is the best.
So he, I knew he was the right guy when, at the end of the first year comes, and I said, do you want, a Christmas bonus, or do you want to come to South Africa to MOBA? He's like, I want to go to MOBA.
Yeah. It's better.
Yeah, so he's fantastic. And then we're starting to bring on some other part-time reps in California and New York as well. Just real rum geeks.
Okay, yeah. That's what you need, basically.
It's a small company, and we have a small user base. We're not huge. We're not, Spirit Bomb or Plantation or one of these big miners. We're like the cool unsigned indie band, if you put it in music terms. We're very small, but we have a presence on the internet, at least, much larger than what we actually sell.
Mm-hmm. So you have single cask rums, you have single origin rums, you have blends as well. But you also have the special, how do you call it?
The rarest editions.
The rarest, exactly. And there is one which I heard, of course, Rumcast, when you released it, they interviewed you. You were talking about this Infinity Cask release. Can you maybe tell us about this cask? Why did you decide to get there? I know you spent a lot of money to get this barrel. Also the marketing. There's a booklet. There's a book without. So it is kind of a tough work.
It was a huge pain in the ass. The amount of work it took and the time it took to put out that bottle was incredible. But it was really a special project. I wish we had the resources to do more of these. Incredibly time intensive. We were offered this special barrel by the guys in Liverpool, and I obviously had to taste it before I shelled out that amount of money. And it was a question of, was it actually good or was it just rare or unique? And it actually really was a really good, delicious rum. They put something into the barrel 20 years ago, a blend of 13 different rums from 13 different distilleries from 7 countries. 5 of the distilleries don't exist anymore. And it was just this, they captured something wonderful. It's 1976 Port Morant and 76 Gardel, which is a distillery that doesn't exist anymore, and Old Carney, Iflot. It was just a really cool barrel of rum that we had to put out, and we got 100 bottles out of it. And then we put 54 in 200 mils without the fancy box and book, just for the people who wanted to drink it. I wish we had more than 54 of those. We could have sold 450 of those. But there's, I think, 2 or 3 bottles still out there in the wild. So it wasn't cheap, but it was. Is it worth it? Is the question people ask. No rum is worth thousands of dollars, but is it priced appropriately? Yes, for what it actually is, and the fact that there's nothing else like it in the world and never will be.
Yeah. Are they all gone, these bottles?
No, we have 2 or 3 of them left.
Okay.
Of the 100, yeah. The 200s are long gone, but I think we've got 3 or 4 bottles left.
Okay. And I heard that you were also trying to sell them in restaurants, in bars, maybe, or was this maybe mainly bought by private?
Mostly brought by private. There were a couple of restaurants and bars that took a bottle and split them out, and everybody gets an ounce for $100 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of high-end, a fancy high-end place in Las Vegas bought a bottle to pour for their high rollers.
Yeah. And was it difficult to approach restaurants and bars to sell this rum? I mean, because
that wasn't done by us. That's really done on our distributor side, and they know which accounts are willing to spend $1,500 on a bottle of anything. In Vegas it happens all the time because they're buying Louis XIII like it's out of style.
Do you see the rum industry evolving? I mean, I saw you also, you mainly sell in the States, of course, because you're trying to import rums to the States. How do you see the evolution in the States, maybe in the next 5 years? Because when you started in 2019, this was 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So in 5-6 years, how will you see the market evolving? Maybe you as importer, as independent bottler, what are the trends?
It's interesting. Among the trends overall in spirits, and then the trends in rum, and then the trends in America are all sort of different things going on. I would say right now we are in the golden age of rum. There's never been more rum available at all different levels and all price points. At the same time, we're seeing a consumption drop in alcohol and rum in particular. The growth has been in the really expensive premium rums, the $40, $50 and up. But again, growth doubling goes from 0.1% to 0.2%. It's such a small share of the market. There's been an explosion of new brands and new blends and new independent bottlers over the last couple of years. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. How many of them will be here in 5 years, and can they all help grow the market? Because right now there's still a very small group of people drinking these high-end rums. And when there was only not too many brands doing it, it was easy because everybody would buy one. And now I think there's more rum being made for the geeks that the geeks can buy all of. So they're going to start to get choosier. Yeah. And I love all these bottlers. They're all doing wonderful stuff. But I think everybody needs to help grow pie, so everybody can keep their sliver of the pie without sort of cannibalizing each other. Because everybody's bringing in great stuff, we just need to find people that appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Which is the most difficult part, I guess, because, as you say, it's a niche market. How do you think in Europe is it going? Because Europe there is a lot of rums. How do you see? What's the difference between European consumer and American consumer?
Europe is way ahead of America in terms of the audience, the selection. They've been doing this, for at least 20 years. The independent bottlers and the high-end rums and the fancy and the huge rum selections, and the appreciation of rum. In America, you got your rum is Bacardi or Captain Morgan's or Kraken, and you go to France in a supermarket and there's incredible rum selections. Mm-hmm. I would say Europe is much further. Americans, when we talk about the rum community, that's not really America. It's not representative. But the ones that are seeking out higher proof rums. They're seeking out more varied origins. They're excited to get rums from Africa and Asia and all these cool places that wasn't really a thing ever.
I see you also export rums. So you are in the States, of course, and I saw you are exporting them in Belize, Aruba, and St. Kitts. By the way, St. Kitts, I've been there, and the L&L Rum Shop, which is amazing. I don't know if you know the owner. Uh-huh. I also have been to he's producing rum, his spiced rum, basically.
Yes.
I don't remember his name.
Clifton.
Exactly.
Clifton. Yes.
I have a bottle of. We went to visit him. Anyway, and. So exporting, yes, is something that you may think, of course, Belize, Aruba, St. Kitts are closer to the States. Mm-hmm. First question, was it difficult to export your rums? And do you think also that you may export it in other places like, I don't know, Asia or Europe? Is this something that you are going to think about?
I would love to. We actually are available in the UK. So we're available in England. We're a little bit available in Canada, in Alberta. The Belize rum, we actually never exported. That was rum we bottled in Belize and left down in Belize to sell in Belize. So you can get our Belize down in Belize at the airport. So I guess that was neither an import nor an export. That's a local product in Belize. Aruba, Mark Theron, who runs the L&L shop in Nevis, and the store in Aruba, they reached out to us and said, "How do we get your rum?" And it's relatively easy when you only have a couple of customers in an island country to send them a couple of bottles. It's much harder to start, say, selling in France, where you've got an enormous country with lots of stores. And because we're such a small company, the short answer is right now we don't have the manpower to add Europe. Mm-hmm. I would love to sell to Europe, but right now I'm still trying to build a company in America before we expand to another continent.
Yeah. So you need to have some sales rep there, or what?
Yeah, you would need a market manager. Mm-hmm. You would need to deal with the logistics and production and separate labels because you need to relabel it. Thankfully, the 700 bottle size that we do most of our single barrels in now is, for Europe.
Yeah,
but that's until we have another person just taking that over. If you want to move back to Europe and run the Europe division, we can talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is challenging, certainly challenging, because also, as you said, European market is also saturated. There's a lot of potential. Yes,
it is. And what would we do that they don't already have access to? Is the question.
Mm-hmm.
They have Savannah. France is the biggest consumer of MOBA rum, bigger than you can't find it in South Africa because it all goes to France.
Yeah. About all your different releases you have, can you maybe tell me which is your favorite one?
No, not even close. We've put out about 30 different rums, I would say, at this point. Each ones have different and special meanings to me. Mm-hmm. The first one, obviously, the Belize 2005 was a special one. because it was the first one we bottled at source with the distillery, and we shipped our
Okay.
glass down there. So we
Yeah.
did that as a co-production. So that was a special one. The Barbados 20-year pot still was a special rum to me because you can't really find pure pot still aged Foursquare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Infinity was special, but it's not
Of
something
course.
I'm going to drink repeatedly. South Africa was an amazing rum. Fiji 2004 was a great one. Mauritius 2007 was a great one. I mean,
And have you been in all these countries to visit the distilleries? In all of them? Fiji, have you been to Fiji?
Fiji is the one I have not been to. I
Okay.
was going to go head down there, and then the pandemic hit, and I couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think Fiji there is just one distillery. if
There
I'm
is
not
one.
wrong. Okay.
Yeah. South
And
Pacific Distilleries.
what makes this distillery so? Because I see a lot of releases about Fiji. What makes this distillery so unique? Is there something special? I don't know them.
Distillery goes back to 1980, and it's owned by the Coca-Cola bottling company of Fiji and Australia. They have 2 pot stills, 2 column stills, and they grow cane in Fiji. And what I like Fiji is it's a really different profile than you get from Caribbean rums. It's almost more of a mineral and different fruits. You get elements of pineapple and dragon fruit, and you don't get that classic vanilla caramel butterscotch that you get in the Caribbean. It's really a different profile. It's really a great fun distillery. So
About the future. So you just put the Infinity Cask on the market. It's already basically gone, you said.
Yeah.
Is there something new coming in the next months? Have you having everything?
Yeah, we're planning. We have some of the rarest casks which will come out at the end of the year, which will be some older rums that we've been holding on to for a little while. We've got the stuff from South Africa coming, which is really exciting. And then we've got some rum traditionnel on the way from Savannah in Reunion Island. Some cool rum that's continuing to age from 10 Cane in Trinidad, which is a defunct distillery that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
It's sort of like a much better tasting Caroni.
I saw a bottle, basically. I saw this bottle in Switzerland. I think it was just a mixing. They are still, maybe some brokers, they still have these casks. Have you tasted them? And what could you tell about these 10 Cane rums?
So 10 Cane was a Moet Hennessy project about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
To make a light cocktail rum to compete with Bacardi, and then being French, instead of this massive molasses column still rum, we're gonna do it in Trinidad, and we're gonna bring our French alembic pot stills down there. And because we're French, we're gonna make fresh cane juice instead.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna age it for 8 months in cognac barrels. And it was, meant for mojitos and daiquiris. And it was, back then, I think it was $30 a bottle, which was really expensive. There was no $30 rums back then. And it was really a great cocktail rum, but it kind of bombed because it was too expensive and the production costs were high and people weren't really ready for it. So the last year, they moved production to Barbados and had Foursquare make it. And it still was not selling 300,000 cases a week like they wanted. So they pulled the plug. They sold the stills to Pepe in Puerto Rico, San Juan Artisan. The cane crushers went to Jamaica, I believe. And Richard was sitting on all this Trinidad rum that he didn't make. And so that went to Liverpool. And on a visit to Liverpool, I found these barrels sitting there. I'm like, 10 Cane, what's this like? And at that point, it was 10 years old. 10 years, been aging in cognac barrels, fresh cane juice rum, and what was a light, low-proof cocktail rum was now this cask-strength beast of an incredible aged, cane juice, cognac-aged rum. And I'm like, let me get everything you have. And, well, we can't do that, but I bought 20 barrels of it.
Okay.
And the plan is we've been releasing 2 barrels every year just to see what this lost distillery will taste like at 10, 11, 12, because the rum will never be made again. So we just bottled the 12-year edition. The 13 will be out probably around Christmas time. It's really an awesome rum.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised it hasn't caught on like the rarity of the Caroni, which is really a divisive rum. People either love it or hate it.
Yeah.
This is objectively an awesome rum.
So you said it's all mainly cane juice rum. So
100%, yeah.
100% cane juice. Yeah, maybe this is also cane juice rum. Normally, it's more difficult. It's just the 2% of the market. Cane juice rums are rum agricole, so maybe it's more difficult to get a wider audience. What do you think?
Well, it's not really that. First of all, it's a pot still rum, and agricoles, according to the Martinique, they're generally column still or Creole still, so that's different.
Yeah.
First of all. And second of all, Europe is spoiled, but in America, we don't get very many really aged agricoles here. All the good stuff stays over in France for the most part. So most of the agricoles that Americans have experience with are white or very, the most 3 or 4 years old. But once you get to try some 10-year-olds and up agricoles, like a Nason, Armada, or some of these amazing rums, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I tasted. I went to visit San Juan Distillers in Puerto Rico. I also met Pepe, and he was talking about how he got these stills. It was a super interesting price because they wanted to get rid of.
Yeah,
he made a nice deal, I think, because
he got a great deal for these great stills that make great rum. So
yes, and I tasted this agricole rum he does, rum agricola, amazing. I just love the flavor profile. It's amazing. Yes, for a daiquiri, for a cocktail, but also drinking neat, it's just amazing. So can I imagine that these 10 can rums have the same flavor profile?
No, totally different.
Okay.
The cognac casks make a difference. The extreme age, at least of ours, and they had different rum makers, different distillers. Pepe, I think, is largely a self-taught distiller, so he's sort of learning as he goes. And same with Robert Graves and MOBA. These people did not go to distilling school. Pepe was a farmer, and Robert was a mechanical engineer, and he approaches it that way. He sent me some samples once, and I'm like, this is amazing. How many barrels of this can we get? And he said, that's the one, because every batch of rum we make is a little bit different. Oh, yeah, the still is really the least important part of the process of rum making. The source, the cane, the fermentation, and the barrel aging is really affects the flavor much more than the actual still. The exceptions being the wooden stills of Guyana. That greenheart wood really gives you some really cool things. But the still is just an instrument. It's like if you give a guitar to Jimi Hendrix and a guitar to my daughter, they're not going to make the same music.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Talking about distillation, is that something that you may consider one day?
Nope.
Never. Why not?
It's not my skill set.
Okay.
Distilling is an art. I'm not a painter either. I have so much respect for the distillers, for the Richard Seals, for the people that really get in there and know how to turn some sugarcane into rum. Not to mention, I'll be, in my late 60s before anything I distill will be something I want to drink. I don't want to wait 10 years or more.
Yeah. Not even like a small experiment, because I have a small pot still, which I bought a couple of years ago in Switzerland, and I like to do my experiments. So is that not something that you would do, maybe some ultra niche, I don't know, for friends?
No, it's really not. And people have said, we'll teach you how to distill, have you up and running really quickly. It's not hard. But my brain doesn't sort of work that way. It doesn't. I'm not a distiller. I don't think I'll ever be a distiller. I have the utmost respect for the distillers. Without them, we couldn't do what we do. But that's not similar way. Like when I was making a record or doing a soundtrack or something, I can play the drums a little bit. I can get down there and play passable drums. But if I'm making a symphony or a movie soundtrack, I'm gonna hire the best drummer I can to do that. There's a guy who spent 30 years in a practice room practicing to play the drums. That's the guy I'm gonna hire to do the drums. I'm certainly not gonna do anything as good. That's sort of my view on distilling.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. No, because sometimes I imagine when you are dealing always with rum and you see so many people producing rum, it may be kind of, why wouldn't I try it one day in my garden, whatever, I don't know, but
yeah,
just I completely understand. So it's sometimes...
Again, the barriers to entry. If you could just buy a still at Home Depot and then do as an science experiment. But I don't have enough time to do what I want to do for Holmes Cay as it is, let alone add in another hobby.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I think. I mean, it needs a lot of patience. This is a half liter, so it's like it's a small one, and you have to be so patient. You have to wait that the cycle ends, and then you have to taste it, redistill it because it's a pot still. I mean, yes, it's a time-consuming hobby.
And you know what? If the phone rings and I got to go take it, and suddenly I'm going to go blind from methanol poisoning.
No, but leave it to the professionals.
Leave it to the guys who really love it. You have to have a passion for it, and that's not where my passion lies.
Have you something else you would like to add at the end? I forgot to ask you, maybe, for example, distilleries, you had problems with them.
I don't think I will ever publicly talk bad about a distillery, just because I know how hard it is to run a distillery. It's kind of thankless. There's no distilleries that are like making huge amounts of money doing rum. I mean, maybe if I had a vodka distillery in Texas making handmade vodka at 400 million bottles a year. But I mean, really, we got into what we do really because I really wanted these rums to be shared in America. We want to celebrate all of these distilleries. I'm not a rum maker. We curate. I go find rums I really like and I think should be shared with the world. So without all of the distilleries, I'm never going to talk bad about a distillery. There may be certain products they make that I wouldn't buy or drink. But even like the young distilleries, they're still learning how to make rum, a lot of them. Like we'll get sent samples from a lot of these new craft distilleries that are starting up, and they're not quite there yet. And I love what they're doing. I want them to succeed. But when you're comparing a 2 or 3 year old distillery that has just some unaged rum with someone like Hamden who's been doing it for 300 years, there's a little bit of institutional experience that's baked into that facility. Or River Antoine in Grenada.
Amazing,
Yeah, but in 50 years from now, some of these little craft distilleries might be there, and a lot of them in the rush to put out a gold rum because people think gold rums are different. They'll put out something that's 18-month barrel rested or maybe even 2 years. And I like to call those the awkward teenage years between like a year and 3 years. Rum, it's really an awkward age where you haven't really gotten rid of the unaged stuff, but you're not getting the benefits of the barrel. It's just 18 months is a really tough age for rum.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of that with these young distillers, and I can't wait till they have 5-year and 10-year, and there are some Privateer as a distillery that's doing really good things in America. Richland in Georgia is doing really good things. So they're out there, and they're just starting to get old enough to have these 10-year-old rums. I don't know if there's any distilleries in America that have 10-year-old rums.
I think this is also a problem because rum is getting like the drink, everyone, and some distilleries are opening, and sometimes we have distilleries which are basically doing not that high-end products or not that good. So yes, time. It's important to give them time to learn. You were talking about the River Antoine. Have you been there? I saw maybe
I've been there a couple of times.
Okay, and have you been there because you want to try to get some rums to the States, or just as tourist?
Well, the first time I went there was about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow. And I wasn't as hardcore into rum then. It might even been more than 20 years ago now. And we went to visit this, and we saw them making this 70% alcohol strained through they were
Crazy.
bottling it out of a Gatorade jug through a cheesecloth, like with no electricity anywhere. And, again, now I can drink 65%, but, 20 years ago, 70% alcohol straight off the still is pretty harsh, especially where I was at that point 20 years ago. And I'm like, I didn't even buy a bottle back then. I'm like, whoa, this is going to strip my walls. And then I went back there a year or two ago, and nothing had changed. They were still bottling it through the Gatorade jug, still no electricity.
Recycling the bottles from all
and
over
now
the world.
that same rum was like one of the best things I'd ever tasted.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting way to view your rum journey. And they've never released an aged rum. That's what I wanted to do. And Luca Gargano managed to convince them to sell some of it to him to bring to the U.S.
Okay.
So we can get the lower proofed River Antoine in America, but not the red stuff. In
Okay,
fact,
the 69 and not the 75.
yes, because 70% is considered hazmat, so you can't put it on the airplane. You can't. So they don't let that leave the country.
Yeah.
What a lot of people do is they buy a bottle of each and then pour the high one into the low bottle so they can bring it.
Yeah.
Because they check you at the airport. They're actually checking to see you're not bringing any of the red bottles out of Grenada.
Okay. When I was there, I bought some bottles. Yeah, I bought some bottles from. I went to visit Renegade. When it was still open, yeah. And I could buy some bottles there, but yes, I didn't have enough space. But I don't remember they checked my bag. But yeah, it's possible that they do that because 75 is a lot. Renegade Distillers. Have you been there?
When I was there, it was over the Christmas time, and they were closed, unfortunately, so I could not get up there. And now I'm not sure the current status of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they closed. I don't know if I don't know what's happening there. If someone maybe as insider, maybe you know something more. I heard about Luca trying to get this distillery, but I don't think
it was him. I don't know who. That was one of those distilleries that everybody wanted to succeed. Mark Rainier, succeeded with Bruichladdich and Waterford and brought in $30 or $40 million to do fresh cane juice in Grenada, on the opposite side of the island from where the logistics are, because there's some cane fields there. So it was expensive. And again, he didn't have the 10 years to wait to have a good 10-year aged cane juice rum. And he was putting out all these different cane field white rums and lightly aged rums. And I don't think there's the market yet. It was the same 10 cane thing. We're going to make this great cane juice, fresh rum, and they sunk in millions and millions of dollars without realizing that the rum consumer market is very small. So without building a market first for it, something like Renegade, I don't see how they were going to make their $40 million back.
Yeah, because if you think River Antoine, they sell 2 products in so many years, a lot of time. But the majority of rums are sold on the local market.
And they sell everything they make. It's like they've never aged a rum because they sell everything they can that's white. As soon as it's made, it's gone. Luca had to beg for some of that to bring out of the country.
Maybe this was also the mistake. They didn't really produce the rum for the locals to try to get at least, cash flow. I don't know, but I mean, it's difficult. It's really difficult. Amazing distillery, big, everything is new, the stills, but they couldn't make it, maybe because it was so ultra niche market.
Well, Jimmy, logistically, it's not an easy place to transport it. The roads are kind of hairy driving around Grenada.
Yeah. Especially if you are not in St. George.
But there's a lot of new distilleries I mean, there's 2 on the way in Barbados. There's Rosalie Bay in Dominica now, which is just starting to make rum. There's the guys in St. Kitts are still trying to get their distillery up and running. I'm hearing rumors of a new Jamaican distillery, a small one in the east.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to visit it yet, but
Yeah.
a
Yeah, I
new
think-
Bahamian distillery as well, which is interesting because there's no sugar cane traditionally in the Bahamas, but
Yeah, there is a huge demand of rum. People are getting into it, investing also money. So of course it's not always easy. Logistics are important. So normally we think just about the distillery, but no, you have also to take these rums out of the island. So again, like Grenada, we rented a motorbike to move around. It was easy and fast. But imagine with a car or a truck. I mean, it's not easy. So yeah, these all small things to take in consideration. That's maybe also why I understand you don't want to get into rum. I mean, distilling rum.
distilling. I would
Yeah,
much rather own a rum shop in the Caribbean with
Yeah.
a little bar where I can sit and play guitar on the deck and, play some
I like your
calypso
plan.
music.
Yeah, some jam sessions. And
Yeah,
drinking
that
some
would be
good
more
rum.
fun to me than dealing
Yeah.
with the mechanics of running a distillery operation.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's like a restaurant. So we run a restaurant. You never know what happens. You
Yeah.
know that you're opening, but you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, maybe better a rum shop, something like
And
this.
every restaurant and bar owner I know is stressed,
Yeah.
incredibly stressed. And
It's not easy,
No.
especially in the Caribbean.
it, it really, there's
Yeah.
nothing easy about any of this.
Yeah. Anyway, Eric, I think I asked you everything I wanted to ask you. Thank you again for your time. Is there anything you would like to add at the end? Something I forgot?
No, I mean, it was great talking around with you. I was looking forward to seeing you down in Cartagena, but if you're not going to be there, then I won't.
When are you coming?
I don't know yet. I
Okay,
haven't booked yet. But I'll see you in Europe. Where are you going in Europe?
In Switzerland. So yes. So our business is we are going to continue our business here in Cartagena. So we do mainly experiences, which is easier to manage also from remote, if I can say so. We have my wife's father who is still here. We have a manager. So we managed everything. So we are ready to keep it running from remote. And yeah, we do rum tasting, cooking classes. So if you like both, of course, you can explore some Colombian rum. Maybe you know them. We do the chocolate, but also cooking classes, which is interesting. You learn about ingredients, local cuisine, and yeah, it's an experience.
That sounds wonderful. Parting thoughts for the people listening to this are most likely rum fans. The best way to have access to the rums you like is simply to ask for them. Ask for them in stores, ask for them in restaurants, because liquor stores only really bring in what people are asking for.
Yeah.
I've had people say, liquor stores, oh, this is amazing. I love this rum, but people don't come in and ask for rum, so it's not going to sell. It's going to sit on the shelf.
Yeah.
So, don't just buy online. Don't buy an auction. Support your local liquor stores and say, hey, I want this. Can you bring this in? And that's the best way to ensure that you'll get the rums you want.
Exactly. As a consumer, you can be not just passive, but being active and asking. People, after a couple of times they ask the same product, they will buy it. So they're bar owners.
There's not a lot of competition. Like, it's such a small industry that we all know each other. We're all friends with each other, for the most part. But we're not just trying to build our little brands. We're trying to build the rum market, and that's a bigger, stage that we all need to help grow. So yes, I can push Holmes Cay all the time, but if I'm not pushing rum first and foremost, we're still going to be these tiny little indie band.
I was just listening to a French podcast today talking about rum agricole, talking about old fashioned. If you go to the bar tender and ask him, a classic old fashioned will be with whiskey, but try to ask it with rum agricole. And this is a completely different way of doing it, but asking to the bartender, you may help to bring it to tendencies that make a trend. So this may switch in a year. You will see a lot of barmen putting it on the menu. These cocktails. Asking small things would help a lot.
100%. You don't know how many times, still to this day, I'll go into a bar and ask for a daiquiri, and they'll say, "Oh, our blender is broken," or "We have no strawberries."
Yeah. By the way, I was listening to his podcast. You know that daiquiri, technically, it was not mixed back then. It was
stirred.
He's a French guy, historian about cocktails. And he said that, of course, then the shaker took... it's because also of the image, the guy or the girl shaking.
Right.
And this is part of the why it evolution. It changed. But yeah, originally it was just...
Interesting.
Stirred, yeah.
To me, that's still the king of all rum drinks. It's the holy trinity of rum, sugar, and lime.
Yeah.
And it's really the best way to check any rum, just to see how it is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Just throw it in a daiquiri.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's also 3 ingredients: sugar, cane, rum, and lime. All basically come from the same region, so you can really have a whole terroir in the same cocktail.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you very much, Eric. So don't hang up. We need to upload it, and yeah, I hope to see you soon. Maybe one day, who knows, in Europe,
Yes.
or if you make it in Cartagena.
Where are you going to be in Switzerland?
In the German side, in Lucerne. Close, 1 hour from Zurich.
Okay.
By the way, I cannot get your products in
Not yet.
Switzerland. Not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
In England you can, but England is not Europe anymore.
Exactly, yes. Well, when I go to England, maybe I will. Anyway, thank you very much, Eric. And
Awesome.
see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, Renato.
Ciao.